Good evening. We hereby call this Juneteenth meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. Every meeting we like to just take a moment and thank all of the brave women of all of our various departments, including in public safety, for the work that they do to keep our citizens safe. I'd like to give honor and respect to the brave men and women of the police department led by Chief Thompson, the brave men and women of the fire department led by Chief Mayo, and the brave men and women of the emergency management department led by Mr. August Vernon. Thank each of you for what you do to help our city be a better place to live and relax. We also give honor to the city manager, the city attorney, all the management staff, and all our city employees. There are 3 items on the general agenda. There is a report on the security assessment for all of our city facilities. Item G2 gives us a little bit of information about a grant match for ballistic protective gear program with the fire department. Item G3 is a presentation from the Winston-Salem Police Department on the Ballistic Information Network. And item G4 is a Winston-Salem Police Department update on the lab. The consent agenda is approved with one unanimous sweeping motion unless a member of this committee or this council wishes an item to be pulled for consideration. With that being said, members of the committee, are there any items that should be pulled for consideration from the consent agenda?
C1.
And I will pull C4. So C1, C2, and C4, is there a motion on the balance?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor, please vote yes. And opposers likewise. That is unanimous. The consent agenda is approved with the exception of C1, C2, and C4. Item C1, please.
C1, update on the deployment of security cameras.
And
Chairman Taylor, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, Council.
good evening.
I'm Kareska, CIO with the IS Department.
Mr. Koresko, thanks for being here today. Are there any specific questions for Mr. Koresko? Would you like a report? Was that you, Mr. Larson, that requested it? Mr. McIntosh?
No, I'm looking forward to a report and would like to highlight what we're doing in that area, so look forward to your walking us through this.
Mr. Koresko, you have the floor, sir.
Speak to it for a highlight right now? Okay.
Yeah, please.
So, what I tried to say in the information memo and the PowerPoint was it's not just cameras, it's a framework we've built over the years, last couple of years, that supports these cameras. Obviously, one key component is the city IT fiber network. We have 120 miles of fiber network that we own. One of the pages in your handout gives a high-level map, and I apologize for the detail. It's not real granular, but it gives you an understanding that we have this fiber throughout the city. Another key component is the contract we have with the company called Call 24, which you all approved back in, I believe, it was September. And they provide support for the cameras in place today. As I mentioned, we have installed 15 cameras a few years ago. We're now pushing 300 cameras. And the list of facilities you see, City Hall, Stewart Building, District 2 Police Station, the Jocelyn Johnson facility, and then, of course, some landfills. We do have several initiatives underway to expand that. Just today, working on the cameras that are going to go in the parking deck on Cherry Trade, crossing the Benton. We're also going to put some cameras on it's a catwalk underneath that goes between the deck and Benton for the street level. Also working on some cameras where I didn't list the rec centers, but if you look at in your the playbook for our 2018 bonds, there's several rec centers that are listed for security updates, and all those rec centers, I believe it's page 24 in the playbook, you'll see all the rec centers. So I guess the point I wanted to make in the handout was we have this foundation between the fiber and our facilities and the existing cameras. We have the opportunity just to grow out, and if you saw the management tool is very powerful. So anybody who's got the permission can be sitting at their home on an iPad or a computer, or can be out of town anywhere if you can get to the internet, and you can see any live cameras that you've been given permission to. If there's a disturbance at a rec center on a Friday night, the police chief could be sitting in one location, the city manager somewhere else, and Mr. Royson and whoever has the permission can be seeing what's happening. 90 days of video we store. We've already shared some of that video with the police department, a couple of different criminal activities, one in this building and one in a golf course. So they've proven to be useful. I think we have a pretty strong foundation in place, and I would encourage us to keep looking at ways to expand on the use of cameras.
I want to commend you. I know this has been a long time coming. I know we had difficulty working with some of our utility companies as far as co-location on some locations, and it sounds like we're finally starting to get past that, and particularly in looking forward to deputizing some privately owned cameras and plugging them into our system. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And in an era where if we can have eyes on the street without having to hire another policeman, we can put that policeman in other parts of the city and have cameras do some of that job. They're never going to completely fulfill that job. But as a sort of force multiplier, I look to cameras as a way to really help secure our parts of town that need the most attention. So.
Yeah, they really tie into the prevent, detect, and mitigate 3 steps of security, and they lend in all 3 cases.
Right. Thank you.
We'll go to Mayor Pro Tem Burke, then we'll come to Ms. Scipio, please.
I was going to ask you to prevent things from happening, like when the person broke into City Hall. How could you have, with the cameras, if you had them, prevented that from happening? I mean, to catch it.
Okay, we did actually capture that video. I'm sure aware of that. We did capture the video. We got video of the individual coming in the basement level, literally walking up the stairs to the first. We could see him walking throughout City Hall. So actually, we didn't prevent it. We captured it. The way to prevent it is to have live video and someone's monitoring or getting alerts or monitoring. For example, this individual climbed over at 2 in the morning over the gate in the courtyard where you all park. And it's a motion detected camera. So if we had an alert set up, hey, there's a motion, we don't expect at 2 in the morning, we could send alerts out to appropriate folks in Winston PD, for example. So there are ways you can prevent it and proactively alert this. Yeah.
I have one in my home. I see the 4 sections of my house. I keep it on all night. So if somebody is coming either one of those doors, we record it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking with all the facilities we have in City Hall, to me, we would need to sort of prevent something. If we look in those cameras and see somebody, then quickly you would contact our police department.
Agree. And when I first got involved with the cameras with Chief Roundtree 3-4 years ago, one of the discussions was to set up an area in Public Safety Center. I know the PD's talking today with the Forsyth County Sheriff. So there's still the concept of setting up a criminal room or a command room, and they would have all these monitors and be proactively watching them, almost similar to the guard does at the front door of this building and across the street.
Thank you.
And Mr. McIntosh and Mayor Pro Tem Burke, this item on the deployment of security cameras directly ties into item G1, which is the item that's going to be discussed in the security assessment report for all city facilities. So we'll definitely get into more of a deeper delve in just a moment. I know Councilwoman Scipio wanted to be recognized.
Yes, a question. Do we have cameras at the Transit Center on 5th Street? And if so, are they not in here or they're in a separate report?
Those cameras are not on our management system today. I know there's cameras there because I just know some activity that we were asked to get involved with through the internet and the network, but they're not currently on our system. Doesn't mean they can't, and the Union Station as well will be on our network. Yes, the capability is there.
Okay.
Councilman Best.
Yes, I was saying Ms. Scipio has an excellent point. I think that's something that we should definitely consider is tying those cameras into the network for monitoring.
Yeah.
Those are both going to be facilities with a lot of people passing through and in need of security monitoring.
You know, one thing that I guess we should keep in mind is wherever you see city signal systems, stoplights, our fiber is parallel right next to it. So that's a great example. We have fiber right there in those street corners around the facility in Worcester. So easy access, I guess what I'm saying.
Councilman Larson.
I enjoyed looking at the deployment of cameras. I didn't really understand where we were projecting the cameras to go, and a list of forecasting how many cameras we were still anticipating installing in the next year or two. And I would simply, as my own personal favorite, if I could put a plug in, I would like to see a camera in front of this building. I understand we have no coverage on the front steps of this building at all. Is that
That's correct, but that we're going to get into that a little bit. But in the security assessment, there are recommendations for lots of cameras at a lot of our buildings.
I saw the briefing. I Thank you. I saw the briefing on, that we're going to get on items 1, but it doesn't get into that level of specific, obviously. And I'm just wanting to make sure that we have some information at some point about what our forecast for this item is going to be.
Yeah, the folks that did this study in item G1 several months back did come and talk to folks in my department. They interviewed as part of the study. The video insight management solution that I mentioned in the write-up, it's an enterprise license. There's no limit to how many cameras we can. I'm excited about it. Not just because it's technology, but as a citizen myself and a taxpayer, and then we can do to protect our neighbors and friends and family. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I agree.
So, members of the committee and council, this is more of an information item. And Mr. Koreski, unless you have anything else to add, I'd ask that you maybe just be available just in case questions may come forth in item G1.
Yep.
So this does not require a vote. So you've heard sort of the direction and the thoughts of the council. And if you just sit tight, we'll get back to you on item G1.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item C2, please.
C2, resolution authorizing acquisition of a vacant lot on Bethel Methodist Church Lane for a new fire station located in the South Ward.
And Ms. Larson, did you have specific
Yes,
questions?
this was actually reviewed just moments ago by Finance, and they appropriated $210,000, I believe, for the acquisition of a piece of land. I do think it's appropriate that this committee actually review that piece of land as an acceptable location for public safety, and I'd ask that the fire chief or whoever wants to do the presentation to this committee for why this particular piece of land is where we should be placing the fire station to be useful.
Chief Mayo, you may not be prepared to give a presentation, but any information that you might can give us. He stays ready. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. I already know how you do, Chief. But I wanted to give you a door just in case you needed to get out of it. But if you just give us a brief presentation on the item, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to Mayor Pro Tem again and other members of the council and committee. Thank you, Madam Secretary. I've got a few slides I'll run through for you. Takes
Please do.
6 to 10 minutes, depending on questions. And if I can get you all to look at the monitor that's in the corner, I've got a pointer over here so that we can all be looking at the same things. So what you see here is areas, all the area inside the city limits. Areas in red are areas that we cannot get to in 4 minutes traveling from a fixed facility, that is our fire stations. The pastel colors are the 4-minute run times from each station. So, for example, up here, when we tell the computer model to run for 4 minutes from station 20, that's what it does. It runs out until it either runs to the city limits, it runs to 4 minutes, or it runs until it meets a unit coming from another station. So, again, the areas in red we can't get to in 4 minutes traveling. 4 minutes is the national accepted best practice for career fire department. So when you cross the lines of where we go a lot, but we can't get there very easily, this area right here in the southwest very easily bubbles to the top much more quickly than any of the other areas in red do. So what I've done here is I've enlarged this area right here for you, and what you'll see there is within the confines of the screen, all requests for service from January of 14 through March of 17. So you can see we run calls all over the city, but you'll notice that they are really stacked in this area right here that we do not reach in 4 minutes traveling. We have a risk hazard assessment tool called the Occupancy Vulnerability Assessment Profile. We abbreviate that OVAP. So with OVAP, what you do is you give it various inputs: what kind of building it is, how that building is constructed, how many stories are in the building, if the building is equipped or not with fire sprinklers, how many employees are in the building, if those employees are in for 24 hours a day, or if they're only in there for during normal business hours, Monday through Friday. And it calculates what they're doing in that building. The example I gave during finance was, we have warehouses that store granite for headstones, and we have warehouses that store tires. Those are two significantly different risks. So what you see here are all within the confines of what you're seeing on the map. These are all the risks that score at least a moderate risk via the OVAP assessment. So these are moderate plus risks, and you can see them, a concentration of them in this area right here. They're stacked up in this area right here. So the last map I have for you is a heat map, and what you're seeing here is as you move from blue to red, the red into the closer you get to red indicates concentration of requests for service, again, within that same area here where we can't reach in 4 minutes traveling. This map's also useful because even to the untrained eye, these stars are existing fire station locations, and to the untrained eye, you can tell that there's a hole in the coverage area right here. So this is the subject lot. This is 4.05 acres on Bethel Methodist Church Lane. This is Burke Mill Road out here. This is the Danby House. This is Bethel Methodist Church, and then this is the Bethel Methodist Church office right here. This gives you an idea of just how built up. This is the subject lot right here in the center of the screen, and this gives you some idea of just how built up, particularly commercially, that part of the city is. So if I take you back to this map, you cannot close this gap right here. We have tried. We've looked for land for a period of time. It could be measured in years, but not 10 years, but 2 years. You cannot close that gap if the fire station is not either addressed on Burke Mill Road or on a street that directly intersects Burke Mill. If you get beyond those parameters, you can't close the gap. But with the proposed location, which will be addressed at 2110 Bethel Methodist Church Lane, we nearly completely cover that gap. The only reason we don't get right here is because there aren't any streets in there. So that location does a nice job of closing up that gap in the coverage area. So within that orange area that you see right here, this is what request for service demand looked like from May of 18 through the end of April this year. About 1,900 requests for service. This area is unique. In most areas of the city, you would see us running medical calls about 2 to 1 over fire. Medical calls make up about 65% of our call volume citywide, but in this area, we're running 2 fire calls for every medical call. The question came up from Councilmember McIntosh at Finance as to why that was, and at first glance, I can only propose that it's because there are a lot of Novant facilities in that area, and we do not answer medical calls in facilities that have skilled care on site, but we do answer fire class calls in those areas. So again, at first pass, that would be my estimation as to why that kind of abnormality in call classification occurs. In that orange area, our 90th percentile travel time last year, 6 minutes, 47 seconds. We're looking for that to be 4 minutes, and that places our 90th percentile total response time. That's from the time the phone rings in the PSAP until the first suppression unit arrives on scene, 8 minutes, 39 seconds. PSAP is Public Safety Answering Point, what is more commonly known as the 911 Center. So in that orange area last year, we were delivering that 4-minute travel time less than 1/3 of the time. So the proposal that we have for you is the church, that land, that lot that the church owns, appraised for a little better than $281,000. We have offered, and they have tentatively accepted, $210,050. The fire station, and this was before we started negotiating with the church. It was our plan to have a multi-purpose training community room as part of the fire station. And so to make up the difference between the cash offer price and the appraised price, we have tentatively agreed to allow the church to use that facility as a fellowship hall. They won't be holding church services in there. They do that in their sanctuary. but they do have a need for a fellowship hall that is a little more current, shall we say. Theirs is in need of some attention. So they're going to use, in the Methodist Church, you can't just raise money and stick it in your pocket. They have to have some sort of capital campaign, so they're going to use the land the money that we pay them for the land. Their plan is to use that for parking lot and stormwater upgrades and improvements. And then our offer to them is that they be able to use that community room, multi-purpose space when they have a need for a fellowship hall. And that space is set up. It is planned for that space to be set up so there is access control, so there are public entrances into that multi-purpose space, but you cannot go from inside the multi-purpose space into the working parts of the fire station without going through a controlled access point. And I'll be happy to take your questions.
Councilman Larson.
Yeah, Chief, could you go ahead and show how that lot would be developed, the piece of property we're looking at purchasing? So selecting that lot and why that particular parcel of land seems to lay out pretty well for the program that we're planning to put on it.
Okay, so this is a $5 million project, and this is a facility that, my idea is that we build fire stations for at least a 50-year vision. And to do that, I like 3 bays, 80 feet long, which is what you see on the. So we right now with this view, we'd be hovering at 200 feet or so over Bethel Methodist Church Lane, looking at the fire station. Church will be to our left, Burke Mill Road to our right. So the working parts of the fire station are in this area right here. This is 3 80-foot bays. This is the kitchen, dormitory, physical training, classroom space of the fire station. This is office space in the fire station for the company officers, training officer, battalion chiefs that would be located there. And then, so this is the proposed multi-use space right here, and then a hall of history over on this side. And so the minimum acreage you would want for a fire station would be 2. That would be to do a fire station, and that would be about all you could do there. So this lot works nicely to be able to accommodate parking for the public spaces of the fire station and accommodate drive-through apparatus access to the fire station. All traffic would come in over here. Fire apparatus traffic would be out over here. Public traffic would be out over here. There'd be no public admittance into this driveway over here, which would be going opposite of the direction of travel for the fire apparatus. So this gives us a comfortable space to operate on that 4-acre lot. Did I answer your question, Councilmember
Yes,
Lawson?
and we're going to name this Lucky 13 Station, right?
Well, we polled, we had an option for 13 or 21. We polled the operations branch of the fire department, and they selected by about 2 to 1, 13 over 21. I have no strong preference one way or the other.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Councilwoman Scipio and then Councilman Bessie.
Chief, the bays, will they accommodate that wonderful new, very long fire truck here?
Yes, ma'am. So that tractor drone aerial that you're talking about, that's stationed at Central Fire Station on Marshall Street, it's 57 feet long. These are 80-foot bays. Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. And the calls for fire, do they include false alarms?
Yes, ma'am. So like fire alarm activations would be considered in that fire class call. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Councilman Bessie.
Thank you. Chief, can you describe the policy regarding when units responding to an event or a call can start to use your siren?
So in this case right here, if we're looking to our left from the view on this screen, the street's a dead end. Fire apparatus, starting about 20 years ago, we've realized that warning devices were deafening firefighters. I mean, literally, the first fire truck I ever rode in, there was a siren right in the nose of the fire truck, right in the dash. Horns were on the cab, on the roof of the cab. If you'll notice fire apparatus now, The siren is is out front on the bumper. There's a shroud around it to project the noise to the front, and you don't see air horns above the level of the headlights. That's the new NFPA automotive fire apparatus standard. So they would not start activating warning devices until they approach Burke Mill Road. There is a house across the street that is currently vacant, but what we do is try our best to be good neighbors. For example, when we remodeled Fire Station 7 on Arbor at Country Club, the fire trucks went from coming out on Arbor, now they come out on Country Club. When they get to the end of the fire station apron with that rescue truck coming out of 7, they are literally about 3 truck lengths from being in that house across the street's bedroom window. And we sent Chief Brown out there, and he told those gentlemen and ladies in that fire station, don't blow those folks out of the bedroom at 2 o'clock in the morning or at 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. They have a small child. We've met the family who lives there. So we try to be good neighbors and use non-audible warning devices, lights, to ease out into traffic until we can get going so that we are not being, well, bad neighbors, for lack of a better term.
Just follow up, in this location, the station will be adjacent a retirement community, and I think you'll be going by, is that actually a nursing home?
It's the Danby House. It's and you can help me, Chris or Bobby, but assisted living, independent living, skilled care, all in one facility. But we're going there over 100 times a year already, right. So they're going to get a higher level of service from us being right around the corner. We're going to make less noise getting there overall.
I just wondered if there was any accommodation that you anticipated needing to make for the adjacent residents for when you're coming out onto Burke Mill Road.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Any accommodation in terms of the audible signal?
Well, again, we try to be as good of neighbors as we can. And what I would tell you, based on 30 years in the business, is when the fire truck's on the road, it's making noise and it's slow and it's in the way until it's going to your house, and then we can't get there fast enough. So we try to strike a balance between the two.
Just, of course, consistent with safety of your men and women in the trucks. If you can just keep an eye on that particular issue once the station's up and running.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Some of the people in the Danby House, they have dementia. So when you're running those fire trucks, because even in my area with the airport, some of the people with dementia, their families say how they get all turned around. Yeah. So that's what Councilmember spoke about. It's very important.
Gotcha.
Councilman McIntosh.
This is probably more for Mr. Rao. Is this financed with bond funds?
Yes.
Okay, and so is there any problem because, I mean, not 100% of this is going to be fire use. So do we spend some money out of parks and recreation and parks and some out of fire? I mean, there's, a museum component and a recreation component in this. Is that kosher to do all that out of a public safety bond?
I mean, I believe so. I mean, we can certainly double check with our bond attorney.
I just want to make sure that we're spending the money the way we said to the voters we're spending the money. Not that couldn't pull it from other places, but,
And if it passes, I believe this item is for action today.
Yes.
And if it passes today, then it will go to the full council on Monday. And I suspect, Mr. Rao, there might be some information we might need if it does pass today, or if it's sent forward without a recommendation, so that we can adequately vote on Monday. Thank you. Has everyone satisfied their questions and comments?
I would move approval.
Okay. Mr. Larson has pulled the item, so he now moves approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's been motioned and properly seconded. All in favor, please vote yes. Opposers likewise. So that moves forward to Monday's meeting with 3 in favor and 1 abstention. So we will actually discuss this on Monday at 7 p.m. That completes item C2. Thank you, Chief Mayo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That leads us to item C4. Madam Secretary, if you could read that, please.
C4, ordinance amending Chapter 38, Article 1, Section 3810I of the Winston-Salem City Code to allow state and/or federal wildlife officers to discharge rifles for the purpose of eliminating deer within the boundaries of Smith-Reynolds Airport.
Members of the committee and council, we've heard from the wildlife organization, the state wildlife organization. We've heard from the airport personnel about the need, why it's important to control the deer population in this regard for safety reasons. I do have a few additional questions, and I believe it's something that I can get answered before Monday. If not, we'll have that discussion at this time. So I had this item pulled so that I can abstain until Monday. So with that being said, if there's no further discussion or consideration, then we'd entertain a motion. Well, it appears, before we do that, it looks like there is someone who would like to speak. I do see someone here on the list, and I saw someone in the audience. Please, if you come and give your name and address for the record, please.
Mark Davidson, 3801 North Liberty Street. I'm the airport director with Forsyth County. Jimmy Capps, who presented with me 2 months ago, is here. So if you did have any questions, he made his way from Raleigh. He can address those now or when you see fit.
Are there any questions for Mr. Davidson and Mr. Capps? We appreciate you being here, and Mr. Capps, we appreciate you making the trip all the way down from the Capitol. I don't see you. Are you in the house? Okay, I see you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. So if there isn't any discussion or any additional questions, we'd entertain a motion at this time.
I move for approval.
It's moved by Councilmember Burke. Second, Councilmember Larson. All in favor, please vote yes, and members of the committee also have the ability to abstain. This item moves forward to Monday's meeting with 3 in favor and 1 abstention. Thank you. This moves us to our general agenda. We will now hear item G1.
G1, Security Assessment Report of all city facilities.
Giving us an update on this information is Ms. Meredith Martin. You have the floor, madam.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, Chair Taylor, I apologize.
Okay.
Members of City Council.
We look alike.
This briefing is going to be brief and kind of very high level because it is very sensitive information. Mr. Kareska actually hit on some of the points of the presentation, but at the end I'm happy to take any questions, comments, and we can move forward from there. So, just to give you a little bit of background of how we got to where we are with the security assessment. In 2015, we did an internal security assessment of City Hall and the Bryce Stewart building. Those findings were presented to the Public Safety Committee at the time. Some of the recommendations that were implemented included adding cameras to the internal portions of the facilities at City Hall and the Stewart building. We added card readers to various areas of the buildings, as well as added lock protocols and procedures, updated those for better access control within our facilities. We improved the lighting on the exterior of the buildings, as well as the vegetation management to improve sight lines and for safety. And then we continued reviewing our security policies and infrastructures. Finally, an item we also did because of this assessment was an employee survey in 2015. It was accessible to all city employees via email as well as our intranet page. And we took that information and realized that we should do a more full assessment, a more thorough assessment of all city facilities, which has led us to where we stand now. So with the purpose of utilizing a security consulting firm that specialized in conducting risk assessments with all of our physical assets in an effort to make recommendations and develop a comprehensive and strategic security plan, we released an RFP in 2017, and we contracted with Business Protection Specialist, BPS. Their goal was to look at human risk, the effectiveness of providing protection and prevention to vandalism, crime, theft, potential terrorist attacks, and then other threats. They were looking at our gaps and vulnerabilities and then providing recommendations to fill those gaps, if you will. So their methodology for their assessment, the city very obviously has a wide range of facilities that provide various services and programs. So they did site visits to all those locations. So administrative buildings such as Black Phillip Smith, City Hall, the Johnson Center on Lowry Street, our utilities facilities such as the landfill, our water and wastewater treatment plants, the Winston-Salem Transit Authority admin building, as well as Clark Campbell Transportation Center, the fairgrounds in the Benton, recreation facilities ranging from the rec centers to the aquatics facilities, golf courses, and there's another one, and parks, the city yard, and then all of the fire stations. They had access, they were escorted by someone from PFM staff so they could go to any area of the facilities. They were interviewing any individuals they felt they wanted to speak with while they were on site. Their site visits lasted from April through August of 2018. The draft assessment was completed in February of 2019. So that's kind of where we stand with BPS and the process they used for this assessment. Within the assessment, they told us about some of the strengths we have, which had actually somewhat been touched on by Mr. Kreska earlier. The video surveillance system that we currently have in place, they said is a good starting point to build our organizational-wide video surveillance and camera system, which Mr. Kreska obviously just mentioned. As far as access control, we're doing very well in that area. The systems we currently have in place have some additional capabilities that as resources become available, we can add those into our system for better security purposes. They did note with our police presence at various facilities and how with the drop-ins that they routinely do with parks, especially recreation centers, they're visible and we're very vigilant in security measures there by their visibility. And then our constant, as we do improvements to projects, we're looking to add security measures, and the 2018 bonds is a prime example of that. There are 15 recreation centers that are getting improved measures through those bonds. So our next steps, as far as where we go from here, BPS is providing the recommendations through a phased approach. Phases 1 and 2 are the shorter term goals. All the phases are kind of listed out based on the scope, timing, capital planning, and resources available as we move forward. So for phase 1 and phase 2, some of our initial things that we will look at will include creating an employee task force for security. This task force would include police, fire, emergency management, information systems, HR, and risk management to ensure the safety of all of our users of all of our facilities, so staff and visitors. We would also look at reinforcing and increasing our employee training. When an incident happens, you want to ensure your employees know how to react and what's the best approach to that incident. So we need to reinforce our employee training. We had, I know, some several years ago regarding active shooter, so continuing to establish those type of protocols. Continue our evaluation of security policies and procedures, infrastructure, where we currently are. And then looking at badge protocols for employees and visitors, so ensuring that our employees are wearing their ID badges on a daily basis, so we know that the right people are in the building and where they're supposed to be. But then also when visitors come to our facilities and check in, potentially having visitor badges for them, so that we know we're helping the folks we need to help, and if they're not, then addressing what their needs are so we can help them. And then finally, we're looking at individual screenings, and these can range a variety of ways. You can look at wands, you can look at mobile metal detectors, permanent metal detectors, all of those sorts of things. So we're really reviewing that currently and evaluating what our options are there and what best fits our community. So that's all I have as far as just a very general look at where we are. So any questions or comments, I'm happy to take those.
Ms. Martin, I want to first thank you for your presentation. It was extremely informative. I think in this city, we want everyone to know that it is our responsibility, we believe, to keep all of our citizens and all of our employees as safe as we possibly can. There on June 1st, you are aware that there was a shooting in Virginia Beach at the Municipal Center, and we can't predict something like that will happen, or it won't happen. But what we can do is be prepared and do things that we can to the best of our ability to keep everyone safe. So this is our attempt at doing just that and informing the public on the moves that we're making. Are there any questions or comments that we might have for Ms. Martin on this subject at this time? Councilman Bessie.
Just in particular referencing the Virginia Beach incident, have you yet considered how the changed sound resulting from use of a suppressor would affect employee reactions in the event of an active shooter incident?
I'll let Assistant Chief Weaver answer that.
Assistant Chief Weaver, you have the floor.
Good evening, Chair Taylor,
Good evening.
Pro Tem Burke, other members of the Public Safety Committee.
Good evening.
If you'd repeat your question for me, please.
One of the one of the problems demonstrated in Virginia Beach was that the changed noise, the changed sound of the gunshots from the suppressor affected employee reactions and awareness that there was a shooter in the building. Have you considered how that would affect employee training and response?
As it stands right now, we're actually reviewing what happened based on the information we have available at this time in Virginia Beach. And with that information, we'll take and make a determination as to what other aspects we need to add into the training. Of course, suppressors bring a different type of environment that was new for anybody to go into a circumstance where that was occurring. But we'll take all those things into consideration and add those into any training that we need to.
All right, thanks. And unfortunately, those are becoming more widely available.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Councilman Larson.
Whose wheelhouse is this going to fall under? It's sort of police, it's disaster training, it's all sorts of, seems interdepartmental, and not seeing the full report to fully understand the work order that's going to have to be undertaken, budgets, and the whole management of this initiative. How is the city going to actually move forward on these things?
So the property and facilities maintenance or management department actually handled the assessment and ran as the lead department for the assessment. But the task force, the employee task force, will essentially bring representatives from various departments because, like you said, there's so many things at play here, and all of our facilities are different. So recreation may be a part of it for all of our recreation facilities, but the home base of the task force will really help develop a point person for who our security folks will be.
So trying to prioritize everything from golf courses to City Hall, as far as implementing funding, city manager question to you, I suppose, is how is the budget going to be designed to accommodate implementation of this? And I'm wondering, within the next year's budget, are we recognizing this as a priority? Are we able
Councilman Larson, yes, I think you will see, I know you will see some things in probably even before the budget. Because we didn't really want to reveal to everybody and their brother what our security risks are. Right. We did not put the whole report out there, but the consultant ranked all and rated all of our facilities at different score levels. So based on that risk assessment and working with staff, well, we're going to prioritize starting with the low-hanging fruit. Cameras is obviously a pretty quick one, but there are many others, and we'll be bringing those back to council to implement, some sooner than later, and some obviously will take some major infrastructure changes, but this is a high priority.
One of the, I'm sorry.
No, you have the floor, sir.
One of the issues was brought up by Councilmember McIntosh, I believe, last meeting, was the question of safety within the parks and park rangers, and I hope that somewhere in that discussion, because it's of the remoteness and the transportation issues of access, quick access, and monitoring those spaces, our public parks, I hope that we're able to pay some attention to that. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilwoman Scipio.
I know we can't reveal everything, but for comfort, could we say that by the end of September there were going to be some strategic things operating to address these issues? And will we have everything done by the end of this year? Is that too ambitious, or how do you sooner than later? I'm trying to get a sense for sooner and later.
Councilman Scipio, our plan is to be back with some of the stuff by September, as you said. I don't think probably that we can implement the entire recommendations by the end of the calendar year. It may take longer, and there's some policy choices. There's a big issue with metal detectors. If you look at Virginia Beach, the only way metal detectors would have potentially worked in Virginia Beach is if you required all your employees to go through the metal detector. So there are policy questions that impact accessibility to our buildings, as well as how you actually construct those. But so you'll see different levels of stuff. Training we can do sooner than later, as well as the cameras and some other things that are pretty important to do.
Scipio?
I know this is a very difficult issue. Have we considered, or are we considering any type of mental health programs for employees that would impact this?
Councilor Scipio, we have a employee assistance program that where employees can go anonymously to seek out mental health assistance. We also have a process where we mandatorily refer people if they show certain indications, but that will be part of this training as well, to try to identify the warning signs when you can.
Councilman McIntosh.
I just want to make sure I know what we're voting on. This is an action request, council action request form. So we have.
This is an information item.
Just information.
So,
No budget.
I thought it was info carf. Okay.
Except the report.
My bad.
but still, does that change your comments? Or
It does.
at least you know what we discussed, and then we can come back to it at a later date. Nothing further? Chief Weaver, Ms. Martin, thank you for the presentation. We appreciate your time. We will now move to item G2, please.
G2, information on a grant match to assist in the purchase of ballistic protective gear for the Winston-Salem Fire Department.
I want to take a moment and recognize Chief Mayo, who will give us maybe a brief presentation, and we'll see if we have any questions from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening to you and the committee and Ms. Mayor Pro Tem Burke again.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
So just a few slides this time. Speaking of Virginia Beach and other instances like that, the medical care is provided. Virginia deploys a different system than North Carolina, but initial medical care is provided by the fire department in concert with EMS here, working with the police department. What you see here is, of course, the vest, steel plates, and the ballistic helmet. So ballistic protection, and I've got a little video that'll kind of help put all this together, but so the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, they are the publisher of national consensus standards on how hose is tested, how fire apparatus are manufactured, the life of rescue rope, and how turnout gear should be laundered, and hundreds of other things. They also have recently published the NFPA 3000 standard on how a fire department should prepare for an active shooter hostile event response. We're fortunate tonight to have with us, stand up, Chris, Captain Chris Belcher works in our training branch. Chris was part of a statewide group that published for North Carolina the recommendations for how a fire department should respond to an active assailant. That publication actually came out. It predates the NFPA standard, so we're fortunate to have Chris right here in Winston-Salem, and it's comforting, a little bit comforting to me to know that we've been kind of ahead of the curve on this relative to the publication of the NFPA standard. I don't intend to read the slides to you, but there have been, and you know as well as I, we hear about the active shooter events that go on around the country. And the fire department does provide medical care as part of a rescue task force response to active shooters. And I'll show you what this looks like. This is an excerpt from a training video that we did that's just hosted on a private YouTube channel for fire and police. So this was at Haynes LaRance School. This is a training exercise. The police department provides the protective cover, and the fire department provides the medical care and patient extrication. I've taken the sound out of this. So the fire department would go in after the police department either has the shooter subdued, arrested, or at least pinned down where we know where the shooter is or shooters are, so that it's safe for fire and EMS personnel to go in and work on patients. And we carry tourniquets and other quick, a lot of the incidents that we have seen Something as simple as a tourniquet applied early on could have saved a lot of victims that were just allowed to bleed out, unfortunately. I've got 4 slides here. I'm not going to read them to you, but just, example after example of firefighters shot or killed at the scenes of fires, on medical calls. In some cases, somebody has actually set a fire with the intention of shooting fire personnel when they arrived on the scene. I'm not saying this is right. I'm just saying this is the way it is. We surveyed our peer cities. Now, Charlotte, we don't really consider them a peer because they're so much larger than everybody else in the state. They do provide ballistic protection. Raleigh is really the only city in the state that will be considered our peer that is not providing ballistic protection. Everybody else, including our local municipalities, Greensboro, High Point, and Kernersville, are providing that ballistic protection. The cost, so what we would do is, we would treat this sort of like we treat self-contained breathing apparatuses. There would be enough ballistic protection for the on-duty crews. We would not issue a vest, helmet to everybody in the fire department. And to do that would cost us about $98,000. The Piedmont Regional Trauma System, which operates here in Forsyth County, that's a partnership between the 2 hospitals. They have offered up to a $50,000 match to help procure ballistic protection. Full disclosure, I'm on the board of the Piedmont Regional Trauma System. I did not bring this up, nor did I vote on this measure. And I think there was a slide I must have skipped. Well, I thought there was something in there. So the level 3 protection is adequate to stop up to large caliber, long barreled handguns. It will not stop rifle rounds, but this is the recommendation. We think that given the fact that police are supposed to be holding the threat in check, and the fact that we need, adequate maneuverability, this is the recommended standard. Again, this is an information item for you tonight. I'll take any questions you have.
Okay, Chief, we've heard many times that it's difficult to put a price on safety, particularly from Mayor Pro Tem Burke and many others at this table. We certainly want to provide you with what you need to be successful to protect your men and women who are serving our community. I imagine there's some questions, so we'll start on this side and just work our way around. Councilmember McIntyre.
Just curious if do these have to be donned prior to heading out? I mean, do they affect response time?
So they would affect response time no more than putting on structural firefighting gear, and we would not wear the 2 in tandem. This is too much to have on structural gear and ballistic protection, so we would do ballistic protection in lieu of structural firefighting gear.
Got it. Thank you.
Councilman Larson.
Yeah, well, that basically answered my question, is how you put this stuff on top of your other equipment, which already weighs 100 pounds,
Yes.
whatever it is. Congratulations on the grant, $50,000, half the cost. So we're paying $200 to $350 basically for a set of gear, which is really cheap insurance to keep our fire and first responders safe. So I think it's a good investment, and hopefully we won't have to use it.
All right.
Agreed. Thank you.
Is there anything further? Councilman, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, then Councilman Bessie.
I was going to say thank you, Mr. Chairman. I listened to the information and I'll think about it, and then questions may come later on. But I will say that we're at least moving forward, and our citizens will know that we're genuinely concerned about this total city, our city employees, and we're just not sitting still tolerating things that are happening without making them aware that we're right there if we need to be.
Thank you.
Councilman Bessie.
Yeah. Is the protocol normally that the vests are worn on every medical response call, or is it?
You won't speak to that. I'm going to defer to Captain Belcher on that since he's the expert in the field.
So the policy we came up with would be any type of medical call that involved like assault, any type of violent incidents, When we wrote the policy up, it started out as strictly active shooter. We quickly changed it to active assailant to include those other calls as well. So if there's any indicators that, whether it comes in a short report from the call or from the dispatcher that says, this is an assault, they would don the proper equipment or PPE, or if they responded to a call, there were premise alerts on our computers on the fire trucks that indicated hostile acts towards fire department or emergency responders, they would don that equipment, as well as the active shooter events, active assailant events.
Thank you.
All right. With that being said, looks like our comments have been, Councilmember Scipio,
Just have one question.
you have the floor.
This is an information-only item?
Information item.
When does it come so that it can be approved, so that they can move forward?
It's my understanding, Councilmember Scipio, is that they were going to check the temperature or the consensus of this committee. It sounds like the consensus is to move forward, and then they will then bring an item back to this committee for consideration.
So it be in August?
I suppose so, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I said sir because I heard the city manager say yes, but I think we can get it back in August. Do you have a preference?
I'd like it sooner than later.
All right. I think we've got something in common. Chief, that's okay with you, sooner than later?
Yes, sir.
I thought so. Any other comments at this time? So it sounds like the consensus, Chief, is to move forward. If you'll prepare an item to bring back to this committee for consideration, we appreciate your presentation and your time. Captain Belcher, thank you as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chief. Item G3, please.
G3, presentation of the Winston-Salem Police Department's National Integrated Ballistic Information Network and Violent Firearms Investigation Team.
All right, queuing us up on this item is Assistant Chief Miles. You have the floor, and I think you're going to make an introduction.
Good evening, Chairman Taylor, Council Member, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, and other council members. I will speak on the Violent Firearm Investigation Team, but first we'll hear about our NIBIN system, which is the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, and the Forensic Services Division Supervisor Karen Watson will present that information.
Supervisor Watson, you have the floor.
Thank you and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You hear a lot in the news this day and time about firearms and violence. And one of the things we have been very good to move forward in this city so far is to be able to combat that. And I'll start out the presentation first talking about NIBIN, which again is the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. Basically, this system was created by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives in 1999. Since this began, nearly 4 million pieces of evidence have been entered into the system. And I can tell you faithfully, the men and women of this department and of the Forensic Services Unit and the new VFIT team, during the last few months, it's been incredible the numbers of pieces of evidence that just our department has entered into this system. One of the things to remember about what is it doing, shell casings are entered into the system. And much like fingerprints, fingerprints are very unique. No two people have the same fingerprint, not even an identical twin. The same thing with a firearm. If you have an assembly line and 1,000 firearms, the same make and model, manufactured one after another, they will not produce the same markings. And that's incredible to stop and think that. But the uniqueness makes that such a powerful tool in the line of work that we're doing. The investigators are able to link a firearm to a scene, one scene to another scene, various crimes. We have been very effective in linking crimes not only in our city, but to outside agencies, other cities in this area, and also out of state. It shows you that the firearms travel and are used in various types of crimes. The city of Winston-Salem purchased our NIBIN system, which is the Brass Tracks Match Point software, in December 2017. Basically, to get the system up and running took several months with AT&T installing the various data lines. The installation was completed in May of 2018. Our NIBIN system went live May 2nd, 2018. While we've already produced a significant number of potential leads that have generated arrest, one of the main things that I would like to say, 2 to 3 weeks after it was installed and went live, we had several cases, 4 cases that were linked. One of those cases was a cold case that basically we had no leads at all. It was a newly created homicide case, but we had no leads. So this tool, this new very effective tool, was able to point us in a direction of a suspect within just weeks of getting it online. Just a few of the statistics. In 2018, the Winston-Salem Police Department had 1,550 packages of shell casings. And basically in each of those packages, you would have had one, if not dozens, of shell casings. The best effort that I had to determine the actual number, you were looking at between 2,600 and 2,700 shell casings seized in 2018. That's a lot of work and a lot of man hours for people to basically work and enter into the NIBIN system. Once these shell casings are seized, not only are they processed for DNA and latent prints, but they have to be triaged by a NIBIN technician or a firearms and tool mark examiner. Basically, they look at the shell casings, they make a determination, the best casings from the scene, plus the test-fired casings from various weapons, and they're entered into the NIBIN system. In 2019, we've had 877 packages to date. To date, the Winston-Salem NIBIN terminal system has completed approximately 1,135 entries. To date, the system has also produced hundreds of leads, and the VFIT team will tell you more about those leads. Currently, there are 5 WSPD personnel who are trained, and we've also trained members of other agencies as well. Again, this is just the first part of a 2-part presentation. I wanted to give you a little bit of the background of NIBIN. Please pardon my voice. I've got a bad cough, but does anyone have any questions?
Any questions at this time? Councilman Larson.
When you say package, I'm sorry, would you say what a package consists of?
The packages of shell casings.
A single shell casing?
Yes, sir. If we go out and once we photograph and process a crime scene, our casings, if we seize the casing from the same location and it's the same caliber, we can package those casings individually, but in one outer package together. But if they're in different locations and seized a different caliber or seized at a different time, they have to be separate. But in these 1,550 packages from 2018, again, you probably had 2,700 actual shell casings.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, Supervisor Watson, I guess, so will someone else be doing part 2 or that we?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Chief Miles.
Still learning how to use a computer.
You're doing a great job.
Okay, before I move forward and speaking about the Violent Firearm Investigations Team, I just want to thank the committee for approving this piece of equipment in the NIBIN system, and just to let you know that it's been a complete game changer for us in our ability to identify suspects and take subjects into custody in relation to gun violence. We're excited to share information with you tonight regarding one of our many approaches to addressing gun violence in our city. As you are aware, we've seen an uptick in violent crime over the past several weeks, and you just heard an update on the NIBIN system from our forensic supervisor, Karen Watson. And as the police department became more familiar with the application and investigative advantages provided by the NIBIN system, Our local Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosive resident agent in charge, Jason Walsh, communicated with Chief Thompson and Sheriff Kimbrough and devised a strategy to create a team of investigators to focus on gun violence in our community.
Great.
Reg Walsh was able to provide information to the chief and the sheriff with the information about the use of the NIBIN system. Chief Thompson and members of our command staff, along with Sheriff Kimbrough and members of his command staff, traveled to Chattanooga, Tennessee to visit with that department to see how they were using the NIBIN system and the team that they had formed to address gun violence in that community. Chattanooga is similar in size to the Winston-Salem Police Department, and the population is also similar. And they have an active and successful NIBIN team. As a result of this visit, Chief Thompson and Sheriff Kimbrough saw the value in the investigative tool and determined that an investigative team was needed in order to address the gun violence in our city. And this is why the Violent Firearms Investigation Team was created. Our team is made up of 1 sergeant, 3 Winston-Salem police officers, 2 Forsyth County Sheriff's deputies, 1 crime analyst, 1 firearms and tool mark examiner, and 1 forensic services technician. The selection criteria for this team, we had to take a real close look at the best individuals that were suited to be a part of this team. And it involved selecting the highly motivated veteran officers with a background in special investigations. The officers needed to be capable of functioning at a high level and also demonstrate proficiency in handling various types of investigations. The VFIT sergeant was selected due to his background with the police department in both special investigations and criminal investigations. He served as a task force officer with Homeland Security investigations for 10 years, and this experience is paramount in having the knowledge on how the federal court system works. He has established relationships with the U.S. Attorney's Office and local federal agencies. Due to the specialized investigative efforts, VFIT will fall under the Investigative Services Bureau in the Criminal Investigations Division. The NIBIN program, as Karen mentioned, automates ballistics evaluations on spent shell casings and provide investigative leads in a timely manner. Compliance to ATF's minimal operational standards will ensure timely entry, correlation, and dissemination of leads. This system photographs spent shell casings recovered from crime scenes, then correlates and connects possible leads. Both the Forensic Services Division and VFIT began entering test-fired casings and evidence shell casings seized from crime scenes. So you'll have some idea, the evidence shell casings are spent shell casings recovered from a crime scene, and also the test-fired shell casings are spent shell casings fired in the WSPD firearms sections from all legally obtained firearms. This is just the image of our NIBIN system. And this is an image of the fire tank where all the weapons are tested. The police department averages investigating calls for service where spent shell casing evidence is recovered approximately 1,300 times a year. In addition, the police department averages around 650 to 1,000 firearms seized a year. The police department has seen successes with the use of the NIBIN system in firearm-related cases to include homicides And to date, from April 7th, they have actually made 7 arrests. Since VFIT began investigating the most recent shooting incidents, members of the team have made arrests in the following investigations: Club Nova at 515 North Cherry Street on April 7th, Bloom Park, 2401 Ivy Avenue on April 13th. There was a shooting on Peace Court on May 9th. One arrest was for a double shooting, where 2 additional gun charges related to the Bloom Park shooting incident for firearm-related charges. So that particular incident right there shows a connection to the Bloom Park incident just weeks prior. There was also an arrest made in the Hutton Street incident on May 9th, where 2 pregnant females were assaulted by gunfire. There were warrants obtained for arrest on 2 shooting cases, one at 1433 Hutton Street and one on Cameron Avenue on June 1st. VFIT members investigate leads they are assigned and work closely with the Forsyth County District Attorney's Office and the United States Attorney's Office to prosecute the offenders arrested in these cases. In early discussions of the VFIT creation, the United States Attorney for the Middle District of North Carolina, Matt Morgan, and the Forsyth County District Attorney, Jim O'Neill, were consulted, and they involved that the staff will be heavily involved in these prosecutions. VFIT is capable of investigating cases throughout our community involving the use of firearms. VFIT is federally sworn with ATF and have the ability to prosecute cases in Forsyth County and in the Middle District of North Carolina. VFIT is visibly seen in the community while following up on firearm-related offenses. They're also responding to active crime scenes where firearms are used. VFIT investigate cases related to felons in possession of firearms, discharging of firearms, shooting into occupied dwellings and vehicles, and vehicle shootings, and narcotics investigations and homicides. The ATF has made the investigation of violent firearms-related crime a priority in our community. They also play a large role in the police departments and sheriff's departments in investigating and prosecuting offenders that VFIT identifies and charges. They also pledge the resources of numerous federal agents and the task force officers from the police department and the sheriff's office. The NIBIN National Correlation Training Center, which is located in Huntsville, Alabama, is a facility designed to be the hub nationwide to utilizing the technology in terms of crime scene and recovery of shell casings and firearms. Spent shell casings have unique markings, as mentioned by Karen Watson, and are examined in effort to connect the shooting incidents to a particular weapon used in a crime. As of February 2019, the Correlation Center has conducted over 128,000 correlation reviews, resulting in the generation of more than 33,000 investigative leads for law enforcement partners. With the support and efforts of ATF RAC Walsh and the backing of U.S. Attorney Matt Martin, the Winston-Salem Police Department became a part of the Correlation Center in Huntsville, Alabama on May 15, 2019. And that puts us way ahead of other agencies, and hopefully we can serve as a model agency for other agencies to come. The Correlation Center will also allow the police department to enter evidence shell casings and test fire shell casings into NIBIN. They will then review all results and send leads back to us within a matter of days. And this is a matter of days versus previously weeks, months. This will dramatically increase the number of investigative leads produced by NIBIN. Partnering with the Correlation Center allows VFIT members to focus on criminal investigative leads in efforts to bring those responsible for violent crime to justice. And with the increased number of trained personnel from VFIT, we are able to enter shell casings again from crime scenes and test fired weapons, again with only a matter of days, and have results to follow up on. Additionally, VFIT is capable of producing leads with NIBIN within hours of a crime if needed. And I think some of the examples we've seen across the different agencies is that they were able to solve a homicide in a matter of an hour based on the information produced here. The primary goals of VFIT is to enter shell casings from all crime scenes where firearms are used, enter shell casings from all crimes, gun seizures, identify violent offenders who utilize a firearm in commission of a crime, work with our local and federal partners to successfully prosecute the identified offenders, be proactive in the community, and also ultimately instill the feeling of safety in our community from gun violence. And I have here with me tonight the members of the Violent Firearm Investigations team that I would like to introduce to you. I also have with us tonight resident agent in charge, Jason Walsh from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms.
Ma'am, Jason Walsh from ATF.
And if you will, if he has a few comments after I introduce the team, I'll have him come forward.
Sure.
If the team will come forward, please. Sergeant Diamond is the lead detective of the team.
Sergeant.
We then have Detective James Gerald. We have Detective Lauren Veal. She's not here with us tonight. Detective Andrew Bowles. And the investigators from the Sheriff's Department that are a part of our team. Well, let me go, sorry. We also have, and they didn't come up, other members of our team.
They're coming now.
Shira Barron, which is one of our 2 mark investigators. If y'all can stand around and kind of let everybody see who you are. And Darian Robertson, which as he serves as the administrator for VFIT. And we also have Investigator Wendy Bowerly from the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office and Investigator Chris King from the Sheriff's Office. Thank you. This, as they make their way back to their seats, this team has made a tremendous impact along with our patrol officers and other detectives and members of the police department. We've put a dent in some of the violent crime, but we still have a long way to go.
All right. As Agent Walsh comes to the podium, I just want to say to the Violent Firearms Investigation team, thank you for the work that you do for our community. I know there's a lot of times your name goes unpronounced, it goes uncalled, but we today get to see the work that you do, and I know on behalf of this committee, I just want to say thank you for the work, and that applause was certainly well-deserved. Thanks again. Mr. Walsh.
How are you all? Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. I want to thank the Winston-Salem Police Department as well as the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office for having me as well. My name is Jason Walsh. I'm the resident in charge at ATF. We cover approximately half of the state. So in our job and responsibility, we see a lot of violent crime. I'm here to tell you today that Winston-Salem and Forsyth County are absolutely the tip of the spear when it comes to being engaged and what it takes to combat and prevent violent crime. I'm not saying that the chief didn't ask me to say that, but I'm here to say Chief Thompson is a visionary. You have the right person leading their department. Us at ATF, and we partner with all our DOJ agencies to include the FBI, the DEA, as well as the Department of Homeland Security, are intertwined with these departments to ensure that we are doing everything we can from the federal side to ensure they have the resources they need to combat some of this violent crime. I had a lot of conversations with the chief and sheriff dating back a year, but prior to even those conversations, you all had the vision ahead back in 2017 to put this system in place. What I'm here to tell you is that I have full confidence that Winston-Salem and Forsyth County will not only be a model agency in this state, you have an opportunity to be a model agency in the entire East Coast. Yeah. We went to Chattanooga Police Department to view what they did. I suspect in the subsequent years, people from all over the country will be coming to Winston-Salem Police Department to see this facility and understand and ask you guys, how are you doing what you do? How are you reducing violent crime the way you are? And it's nothing because of what I've done, it's because of what the members of this team are capable of doing. Just earlier today around 2 o'clock, we had a meeting in my office where we had probably 40 local police officers from Greensboro, Burlington, Winston-Salem, Alamance County, Durham, all involved as we are regionally looking to attack this crime. So we understand at ATF, shooters don't have jurisdictional boundaries. So giving these officers the ability to go where they need to go, whether that be High Point, Greensboro, Durham, Charlotte, to apprehend offenders that are either laying their head here or doing the shooting and going somewhere else, they'll now have the ability to go and catch those perpetrators and bring them to justice. So I applaud you all's effort. I thank the chief and the sheriff for the opportunity to be alongside them, because this is an ATS program. This is Winston-Salem Forsyth's program, and it's an honor to be a part of it.
Thank you, Agent.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
We're available. Any questions, should you have any?
Members of the committee, are there any questions at this time? Other council? Councilwoman Scipio.
Just curious, the entire team is housed at our police department, including our sheriff deputies?
Correct. That is correct. They're housed at our Beatty Training Center.
Great. In the presentation about the system, NIBIN system, is it correct that we do things here with that, and then you got the bigger center that they can do things even more specific with those cases?
That is correct.
Shell's cases, is that what happens?
Pretty much the same work can be done at both locations.
But we send some of our, we do our little stuff here, and then we then upload it or send it?
They kind of second, they verify the work that we do.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I don't know if it's a top secret. Is there something we're getting from the ATF because we're connected with them that we wouldn't have had if we weren't connected with them?
Being a member of that correlation center.
Anything else? We get any kind of super abilities or anything?
He's super in his nature, but he also provides staff. I mean, he will bring his staff in and make them a part of our team whenever there's a need for him to do that.
Yeah, and to hit your question, there's nothing super secret we do per se, but what we are doing is working with these officers daily. So when it comes to crime scenes or something that's shooting to happen, you guys spoke about, Virginia. I got my marriage license in that building.
Wow.
Virginia Beach. So I'm very familiar with all these incidents that are happening nationwide, and what we're doing is bringing any federal resources we can, as well as that information, and ensuring that it is shared amongst all those that are here serving to protect your community daily. Winston-Salem is a safe city. I mean, you guys have the best, and I'm not here to say it because I'm here in front of you all. You have the best of the best on this job. They put this chief and this chief's, they had, when I first started making my discussion with them, they made some very hard decisions on pulling people that are very good in their job and putting them in this place to attack gun violence. And we're appreciative for it, and I have sure confidence that the community will see results because of it.
Ma'am. Councilman Bessie.
Not a question, really, just a comment. I am not one of the council members on either committee that met today. And I came down to City Hall this evening primarily for this briefing. And I can certainly say that it's more than worth my time. And I thank you for the briefing presentation and for all your work. We appreciate it.
As gun violence increases across cities and the urban communities, people want to know, what are we doing to address it? And, in this city, we've beefed up patrols. We've strengthened neighborhood and community organizations. We've got NIBIN, we've got VFIT, we've got this wonderful team that are out on the streets. So I just want people watching or who might be reading tomorrow to know that we are watching, we are being vigilant, and we're doing what we can to keep you safe. Chief, did I sum it up? Is there anything else that you want to mention before we?
I'll just, in conclusion, I think it's important to know that since April 7th, we seized over 198 weapons.
Wow.
And we know that we still have a long way to go.
And before you leave, I may have spoken too soon. We've just got 2 additional comments. We'll go to Councilmember Larson and Councilmember McIntosh.
We have just way too many weapons in storage, and I wish we could find a way to clean those out and put them in a hole somewhere and deal with them. But I want to say, first of all, collaboration. I think it's been a long time coming to see the county and our police department work together. Yes, sir. Like our new sheriff and our new chief are doing. And congratulations to the staff, and thank you to the ATF and their support across the board. But this kind of collaboration is where the future of crime prevention is going to occur, and I applaud that.
Thank you.
Councilman McIntosh.
I want to echo Chair Taylor's comments about our forward-thinking police department. When we go to state and national conventions, we go into breakout groups and we hear discussions about things that are kind of considered leading edge and are things that we've been doing for years. So it's just really great to see that we're continuing to push that and to use technology as a force multiplier. We can't put bodies on every corner, so using technology smartly, I think, is a really wise thing. So thank you.
Thank you. And just before I conclude, on behalf of Chief Thompson, I would just like to publicly thank Agent Walsh for his work, and everything that he does is very much appreciated.
We're here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item G4, please.
G4, Winston-Salem Police Department update for NMS Lab.
All right, and I think giving us this update is going to be Supervisor Watson. If you don't know, I think in 2015, the city of Winston-Salem made a move to have its own lab that deals with forensic technology and information. We have done that so that we could sort of expedite some of the cases that were backlogged and to assist the state of North Carolina with some of their backlog. And as I understand, this is an accredited organization, and things are going extremely well with the lab, and I think we're here today to discuss a little bit about the contract. So, Supervisor Watson, you have the floor, madam.
Thank you again, sir. Again, NMS Labs is a world-recognized and accredited lab for forensic testing. They're based in Pennsylvania, and back in 2013, 2014, we noticed that the district attorney's office a dismissal in cases and also a reduction in charges. And that was no fault of what the department was doing, but was because the state crime lab was in charge of doing all the analyses for our drugs and for the blood alcohol. They couldn't meet the demands for basically 100 counties within the state of North Carolina. So unfortunately, the analyses were backlogged, and that resulted in a reduction in charges or dismissal of cases. Right. When we saw that, we knew Winston-Salem could not remain effective as a law enforcement agency when it came to those types of charges. So we looked at several options. One option, no change. And we felt as a law enforcement agency that wasn't the way we could go. Another option was to build a lab, but that was not cost effective when you look at what it takes to build a lab that could perform these analyses and also to be able to train and staff it. Another option was to outsource with a laboratory out of state. The testing wasn't that expensive, but the expert testimony services, it was cost prohibitive to do that. We continued to discuss the option with the NMS Labs and reached an agreement in 2014 for an on-site outsourced laboratory. And basically this laboratory is located at the Beatty Center. They do a remarkable amount of testing. Since we've contracted services, probably around 3,500 or 4,000 analyses. Blood alcohol testing is done within 2 weeks. And drug identification is done, blood alcohol is done within 1 week, and drug identification within 2 weeks. Currently, if we started to submit these tests to the state crime lab, they don't have the backlog that they did years ago of it being 18 to 24 months, but they still have a backlog of probably 6 to 12 months or longer, depending on the analysis that you need. This lab and this partnership with NMS Labs has made us so effective as a law enforcement agency to be able to do the timely analysis and get the results back. There's not an issue regarding court. The chemist or the scientist are here in Winston-Salem. They can be called to court and be at court within minutes. The district attorney's office has highly supported working with NMS Labs, both when we were doing the research and during this 5-year relationship with NMS Labs. The district attorney's office has assisted us with restitution. The North Carolina State General Statute will allow up to $600 fee for forensic analysis and up to a $600 fee in restitution for expert witness testimony. To date, we've received $52,787.08, which again, we weren't expecting to get dollar for dollar for each test. I look at that and I think that's an impressive amount when you consider the different people that go to court. I think that's very impressive. Our contract will be renewed next month. It will be a 2-year renewal. Our contract, the only fee increase that we had was we went over on samples. Our monthly contract allows us to be able to test basically 750 samples during that time frame, and we exceeded that by more than 10%, so there was an increase. For this next contract, there will be a slight increase of 5%, and the 2-year contract will be July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2021. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions to this time? Councilman.
What's the annual cost of the contract?
Currently, before the increase with the overages, it was $9,000 per month or $108,000 annually. With the increase in samples, our overages, it went up to $9,900 per month or $118 annually. The 5% increase will take us to $10,395 monthly or $124,740 annually.
Do we run into any issues with capacity? Can they handle everything we throw at them?
They have not had a problem. We're actually throwing more at them than what we were expected to throw at. And actually, they have contracts with 4 or 5 other agencies and do services on a case-by-case basis with about 9 to 10 agencies.
When this contract first started, I asked the question about was there the ability to leverage our facilities there to lessen our cost burden? I mean, does the sheriff's office use the same service?
I think the sheriff's department does case by case. They do not have contractual services.
And they pay NMS directly?
They do.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Larson.
All I can say from this meeting today is it's a very impressive assortment of resources that are being dedicated in this city. I mean, we've heard about shell analysis and being on the cutting edge of that. We've heard from the feds about how we organized and how we brought the county and the city together to task forces with a VFIT program. And now we're hearing about contract services to expedite the caseload that we have for investigative work. All of this coming together, and what it means is that our attorney, Jim O'Neill, has a much easier job, and because you are providing him the information he needs quickly to get the prosecution that needs to be done. And so I'm very impressed. I'm pleased to have this briefing today. I think if the public who has sat through this and paid attention to it realizes that our police force is multifaceted, and the backup behind the people that are out there on the front line in the cars is extraordinary. So thank you for all the time you've spent on this.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Councilwoman Scipio.
I think this is impressive. I'm a NCIS and CSI sort of junkie, and
it's exactly the same. Yes.
I'm sort of happy that we have some of that here. It's not as internal, but I think it's important that people understand the caliber of work that goes on here. So I'm assuming since we contract the labs out, they're not city employees. However, I think it would be great to be able to let people know that those kinds of jobs are available. It fits into innovation, and I would like for us to sort of showcase what we have and let people know that we have really sophisticated jobs that really help us have a quality community. So I'm very excited about that. And I suspect my intern must have come and spent some time with you.
Yes.
He was so impressed that he wanted to come back again. So
he did.
I thank you very much. He was so excited about that. So thank you very much. So I just think that this is just wonderful. Thank you.
The last word on item G4 goes to Councilman Bessie.
Oh, no, I already said thank you.
That's the best last word in the business right there. So thank you, Supervisor Watson. We appreciate the presentation. It was very informative. And thanks for all you do to keep us safe.
May I say one more thing?
Oh, stay on.
I know when we were constructing the lab, a lot of you had the opportunity to come see it, and I had the opportunity to get to show it off. And again, I would extend that opportunity to come see what we do. We truly do have a forensic services that you'd be very proud of.
Can I come back?
Yeah. I'm gonna
You can come back as many times as you want. Just
I
going
will
around the
come.
table now. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
That concludes our consent and general agendas. Before we move to adjourn, I know there was one additional comment that needed to be sort of flushed out, so we'll give Councilman McIntosh the floor.
I just want to shout out to our folks on Winston-Salem Police Department. They took a guy off the street the other day with 65 grams of fentanyl. This was at a house, a heroin house in a residential neighborhood, and I know it was a lot of work and a lot of legal dodging, and I mean, being able to go in and get them was just a really heroic effort. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman Scipio.
Thank you, Mr. McIntosh, because you always tell me what I need to say. I need to tell the police department, thank you so much for taking care of a house on Amanda Drive. My neighbor told me Sunday, he came up and said, wow, you did a great job. And I said, thank you. What did I do? But thank you for handling that. It's really important that residents know they are the ones who tell us what's going on. We can't be there all places, but when they tell us, our police department is superb. Thank you. We do not want drugs in the East Ward, and if I hear about it, I will report it, and we will get you off the streets. Thank you, Police Department, for doing an excellent job.
Thank you. And our VFIT team, along with several other team members, was responsible for that.
Thank you.
Right. And as we move to adjourn, I mean, if we had to have a theme for today, I would say today's theme has been collaboration, whether that's collaborating between the fire and police departments, or the police department and the sheriff's department, or the ATF, or, you know, the lab and the DA's office, or the city operations on cameras. We cannot operate in the city or in this county in a silo. It takes all of us coming together to move the city forward, to keep people safe, and today we saw excellent examples of that. If there is no further business that should be considered for the good of the order, we hereby consider this meeting to be adjourned.